Okay, thank you all for joining me for Aikido in Everyday Life. In about 5 seconds, you're going to see a presentation on your screen. Let's see. Present. Okay, now escape. Right. Share screen. Share application. This thing. Share. Okay. Present. Okay. I cannot see any of you, so I'll be going over Aikido in everyday life. Aikido in everyday life is a communication strategy that uses principles of Aikido to teach us how to deal with conflict. It's by me. My name is Reverend Rosalyn J. I'm an ordained clergy person and master at Temple of the Jedi Order. This book was given to me by a friend who is also a Jedi. And while I don't necessarily agree with everything the authors put forward, I consider this book a valuable training tool in communication. I chose this work because it provides a unique perspective on aspects of communication essential to us as Jedi. As individuals who act from our center, who prize and work towards balance, and who consider harmony essential, I thought this work would be a good to gain wisdom from. As a small note, I'll only be going over the basics of this work, which are explored in part 1. I recommend those interested purchase the work from your preferred shop. Another small note, I apologize for this rather long PowerPoint. Okay, the beginning of this this book actually starts with some ideas about you losing. You can see them on the screen. You lose because your idea of winning and losing will keep you losing until you change that idea. You lose because, like most of us, you have been sold a bill of goods about victory. You lose because you've been living your life as if your family, friends, and co-workers had just suited up for a game and you were the Oakland Raiders front line. You lose because your sense of yourself has mistakenly become bound up with your tally on a non-existent scoreboard. You lose because even when you win, sometimes it feels as if you have lost. All right, so let's open the chat here. Any ideas, and you're free to type them in the chat. Tell me a little bit about your ideas about losing and winning. What do you think when you lose? Or what do you think when you think about oh, sorry, my bad. What do you think about when you think about winning? Or its close cousin, you're wrong. So the ideas are you lose and you're wrong. What do you think about there? Any ideas, any thoughts? So your last example was you are the whole quarterback or the whole team? That's a good question, right? What what is the difference if you're the quarterback or the whole team? If you're the quarterback, do you feel more responsible? Oh, you're the quarterback for the whole team. Okay. So really, I often play with my kids board games, so winning is not a big thing for me. Participating is the most important thing. Okay. Any other thoughts? That's from Vincent there. I'm not sure if in this example, this is not an example that I came up with, the example of the football player. It's not an example that I came up with. It's an example that the authors came up with, and I'm not sure what they meant by it, except, you're in a game where winning and losing is important. Okay, let's go on forward here. Okay, so let's think about the ways in which losing is considered. There's a positive idea. I lost 20 pounds, or I lost my fear of heights. Or there's a negative idea. I lost a game, or I lost my job. Considering both ways, ask yourself how you are most likely to use the word lose in your life, and how does that affect you? So let's talk about it amongst ourselves. How do we use the word lose in our lives? Have you ever thought about it? What's the most frequent way you use the word lose? And again, you're free to type in the chat. All right. I just want to make sure before I move forward, can everyone see the PowerPoint? Because it's not showing on my screen. Yes, okay, great, making sure. Okay, all right. Now, contrast that idea of losing with winning. How important is winning in your life? The authors make a compelling argument that just as there's negative aspects to losing, there's negative aspects to winning. Think of the Olympic gold medalist who has to maintain their top peak performance in order to be considered worthy of the Olympics. Or think of yourself at your own job. How much of you continuing to perform over and above and beyond your job description is tied to winning and tied to maintaining your job. So, or how much of life in general is tied to winning or maintaining your job or maintaining your status. Like think about even the spaces that you occupy. How much of that, how much does winning play into that? And we don't necessarily think about it as winning. We sometimes think about it as, obtaining a goal, things like that. So sometimes it can be hard to get away from the mind frame of winning and losing. We'll go ahead and skip this exercise, and we'll and like I said, this will be available in a PowerPoint, and it'll be made available in the forum. Okay. All right. So one of the important things that the author does state at the beginning of the chapter is that we learn to treat everything like a contest, where winning and losing is so important. And in doing that, we also do that with communication, right? Alan Watts talks about the game of black and white, where white must win. And that becomes the mind frame in which we engage ourselves. But the authors say that we should learn while we are communicating not to treat everything as a contest. Winning and losing is important so long as what you're winning and losing is a contest. But if you're talking about winning and losing in an argument or in a heated discussion, any kind of communication between two human beings, the authors say we've kind of lost our way. Okay. So, but having said that, conflict is a part of everyday life. We cannot escape it. Conflict happens in nature, and conflict happens in ourselves, and conflict happens between human beings. That's just life. And in saying that, there are a couple of different conflict personalities, types of people in conflicts, right? So we have the magnifier, the person who views each conflict equally, right? So somebody cuts me off in the middle of traffic versus I have an argument with my parents. It's a little bit different. The conflicts are different. Okay, they have conflicts. They have a different weight, right? But for the magnifier, the conflicts are the same. We have the misperceivers, right? The person who sees conflict where there is none, right? That would be a person who, like, for example, takes something the wrong way, or misinterprets a communication, right? That's a misperceiver, right? To keep ourselves from that, we have to look at context. How was it that this was actually meant? Sometimes that can be hard to do, but it's important to get in the habit of doing so, right? And then there's the person who sees the wrong conflict, right? So if I have a roommate and my roommate says, you never clean the dishes, right? Is that really the conflict, or is there something else under the surface, right? If it's not really about the dishes and it's really about our failure to communicate, and it happened to boil over to you never cleaned the dishes. It's important as astute communicators to realize what is at the root of miscommunications or conflicts. All right. Before I move forward, I'm going to look at the chat and make sure there's no questions, comments. You like to agree to disagree. I do like that too. Sometimes that is an important strategy, right? Okay. All right. Let's look at the rest of the chat here. Getting older, we lose our abilities, or with illness, I may lose something like a sense of smell. The worst is to lose my cool when, for example, my kids are pushing it. Losing my patience, right? Okay. Desert Ray, do you want to kind of elaborate on that? What you meant by did I pass that part where you talked about it? You're free to unmute if you'd like.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the part about losing abilities as we get older? I mentioned.
Yeah. Do you remember in what context you talked about?
I think the question was, in what context in our lives do we think about losing?
Oh yeah, you know what? I didn't think about that. As I was putting the presentation together. That's a huge thing. Yeah, that's losing, or you can do nothing about it. You know.
Yeah, not in the long run, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and then losing your cool. That's a different type of losing. So there's a lot of different contexts when we talk about losing, right? Losing your patience, losing your temper. We talked about agreeing to disagree. That is one of the strategies we're going to talk about just briefly. Um, okay, so then there's the failed perceiver, right? I'm not going to belabor the point, right? The failed perceiver is going to be the one who doesn't see a conflict anywhere, right? No matter how much the person is needled, constantly says, "Oh, I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. I'm sure that's not what they. Maybe you misinterpreted it," and things like that. Just kind of oblivious to the world around them and to the conflicts going on around them that they are a part of. And in that sense, if I can just add, individuals can be taken advantage of, right? So it's important as we deal with conflicts to do the four following. Take the past into consideration. Be on the lookout for questions that really are statements. Observe the person's face if you can. Sometimes when you're online, it's so difficult. Breathing, manners, basically body language. What is their body saying? And then listen carefully to what is maybe not being said. In the book, the authors talk about, the statement, "Do you think you really should be wearing yellow?" Which the person who made the comment, the suggestion was perhaps they don't like the person wearing yellow. So that's skip the exercise. If we have time, we'll come back to it. There are fighting, withdrawal, parlay, doing nothing, and deception. Right? None of these are inherently bad or good responses to conflict. What actually becomes bad or good is when we let one style of conflict resolution be our only style of conflict resolution. Like I know, for example, I like to withdraw. So, because I like to withdraw, people know how to get to me. They know when I withdraw. Obviously, I felt like the conflict might have been too much, or I couldn't handle it, or whatever their idea from that withdrawing was. Uh, okay, so we have fighting back, right? So we're going to go through each of these um, in turn. So fighting back should be used as a last resort. Okay, fighting back should be used when life, limb, or principles are on the line. Um, Fighting back should not be used if there is a escape route. And then you should never extend your counterattack, beyond the possibility of return. So if your counterattack damages a relationship beyond repair, that's an indication that it might have gone too far. All right. All right. So in looking at fighting back, we got to look at, and this is going to be true for all of the conflict styles, conflict resolution styles. What is the relationship? Are you all friends? If you are two strangers on the street, and the conflict is not endangering your life, limb, or principles, it's best not to worry too much about it. You don't have anything at stake, right? Is this the right time to be fighting? Do you want to fight at a family reunion? I mean, or do you want to fight in the elevator? Is this the right place? Yeah, and then is this the right time? Are you in the right space? The most important thing when we think about time is, are we balanced, or are we emotionally unbalanced? If we are emotionally the goal of anything is to restore harmony, right? Enter into conflicts in the right state of mind if you can. I know stuff is not always easy, and so in that sense, it can be difficult to find center. All right. So steps to fighting back: you got to immobilize the attack. You got to gain control of the situation, and you have to restore harmony. All right? So immobilize the attack, right? You have to put a stop to it. In the digital world, you might say, hey, I will not be insulted, right? You may physically, if you can, if you're in the offline world and you feel comfortable, you may step into your opponent's personal space. Just to indicate, hey, this is enough. I'm not one of those persons who does that. But that is one of the ways in which the author explores that. And then again, the restoration of harmony is so important. Avoid making killer statements. And remember to remain specific. Even if your opponent tries to take it offline or tries to take it in another tangent, as long as you can focus on the situation in which you are in conflict. The situation, not the person. So in our previous example about washing the dishes, if that was really going to be a conflict, it's about the dishes, right? Not about the person. Okay, so fighting back. Continue. Body language, right? Important. Let your body communicate for you. That's about 70% of language in any case, especially offline. Let your body know, let your facial expression, posture, and spatial relationship indicate the status of the conflict resolution style you would like to use. For fighting back, this is not as difficult. Most people know how to posture when trying to fight back. But for Aikido in everyday life, in maintaining that balance, we've got to show the centeredness of our spirit on our face and our body and our posture and our spatial relationship, right? Remember, the goal is to restore harmony. Okay, now moving forward, well, before I do that, let me go ahead and look at the chat, see if there's any questions, comments, concerns here. right? Spell that. The failed preserver. Oh, the failed receiver. I think I got that right. Receiver. Failed receiver, or something similar to that. Failed receiver. I might have spelled it wrong. I'm very sorry. All right, so moving forward, we have withdraw, right? Withdraw is just simply leaving the conflict. If there is an escape route, if the time is incorrect, if the time is incorrect and you need more time, and then we also have to learn how to think differently about the idea of withdrawing, right? You consider withdrawing a coward's way out sometimes, right? So understanding that we can put our ego on the back burner here. We don't have to rise to every conflict. We can choose to withdraw, especially if there's an escape route. There's a quote here, right? Self-esteem comes from handling yourself well and being pleased with yourself, not from becoming entangled in conflict and wiping out somebody else, right? So realizing that, maintaining that balance is so important. Okay, so parlay. Parlay is used when there is it's a no-win scenario, like a Kobayashi Maru, for those of you familiar with Star Trek. I know, wrong fandom, but I thought that was interesting. So parlay, focus again on the situation. You really want to look at compromises because neither of you can win. Neither of you can get exactly what they want. So focusing on realizing when parlay is important and being able to indicate in yourself, choose for yourself whether parlay is important. One of the things the author brings forward is your opponent, the person you're communicating with, may have defined what you're communicating about as a contest, but you always have the ability to choose whether or not something is a contest for you. And you can choose in your balanced and centered state to parlay or to withdraw, you know. Okay, and then you can simply do nothing, right? So doing nothing can help us when we need more time or when we want to find out what's going on, what's really behind or beneath the attack. Sometimes doing nothing and simply being silent gives your partner, your opponent, time to reflect and really consider what is actually underneath what they're saying. A lot of people don't think about that, and they just, especially when they're in a heightened emotional state, and of course there's no judgment there. But understanding when somebody is in a heightened emotional state, sometimes we don't think about what we're saying. And it's incumbent upon us as balanced and centered individuals to try to recover our center and try to be in a different, a balanced and centered state. And so sometimes that means doing nothing or seeming to do nothing, right? But it's important in this space to realize why you're doing nothing. You're not doing nothing because you are afraid. If you're doing nothing because you are afraid, that's the wrong more. I'm going to check on the chat. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? I know I'm moving pretty fast. Okay, that said, let's do nothing can also be helpful if you're not sure what you feel about something. That is so true. It is so true. Doing nothing can be so important when you're trying to get your feelings uh, in order, right? It's a good opportunity to center yourself. Okay, our last strategy for right now is deception. And I know that's going to sound like, oh, sneaky, sneaky Sith thing. No. Remember that, I'm saying remember like you have this information. But in accordance with the authors here, deception is about buying time. It's not about solving problems. So deception can be helpful if you do need more time and you don't have the choice of not doing anything. For example, the authors explained in the book that in this one example, a person was on the phone and they were getting chewed out by their boss. And their options were to sit in silence, to fight back, or to deceive. And so they said, oh, you know, boss, I have another call coming in. They did not have another call coming in, but this gave an opportunity not only for the person getting yelled at to cool off, but also maybe for the boss to cool off. And so there are times in which deception can be helpful. It's just we have to understand also that deception is not about trying to solve the problem. The deception is kind of like, I'm putting this over here for now until I can think about it. But in order to do that, I don't have the option of waiting, and I don't have the option of parlaying, and I don't have the option of withdrawing without a deception. Okay? So the most important thing to consider is to invent stories that have a grain of truth. This is one of the things I don't quite agree with the authors about, but if you do purchase the book and you find this information and you find that you do agree with me, with the authors, you will chat with me. I'd be more than happy because I'd like to hear some others' points of view. What do you all think about the idea of deception? Just hang up on the boss. Huh? I would love to do that. That's always interesting because there's a little balance of power there. If I hang up on the boss, what's the likelihood that I'll get fired? I don't know. There's always something to think about. Yeah. I like the way you explain it as a way to buy time, but not the solution. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Talking about deception. All right. Having said that, we're going to move and try to move a little bit faster here. I got so much to cover. Okay, here we go. Where are we at? So we are at deception, right? Okay, so we're done with the strategies for now. We're going to talk about centering. Okay, for those of you who practice meditation on a regular basis, you're probably already familiar with centering, right? For those of you who have taken Alethia's meditation course, you're already familiar with the idea of calming breath. Okay? You may also be familiar with the idea of, and I'm about to butcher this, and I'm sorry, Dantian, which is 2 fingers below your navel. That's your center point. Some people call it solar plexus. What is that called? Sacral chakra? Well, no, one of the chakras. I'm really bad at that. It's not. I'm not really that familiar with it because this is not the type of meditation that I use. But I do think the way that the authors explain it is very, very helpful. So you start off laying on the ground, then put your fingers to 2 fingers below your navel to find your center point. And then imagine all of the energy from your head and chest migrating to that area. If you can, even try to imagine that your eyes have been transplanted to that area. And see what happens. What actually does happen is you end up experiencing considerable relaxation in your muscles. That is centering while laying down. Once you've done that for a considerable amount of time, you can practice it while sitting. Sitting, you'll work on making your body heavy, right? From the center down. So again, imagining that all the energy has pulled down to the lowest part of your stomach. Okay, and then if once you get to that, you'll feel a difference. Once you get to that level, then you'll go ahead and practice while standing, and that's a bit like imagining that you have grown roots from the bottom of your feet, and then you're also going to put your non-dominant foot out a little bit in front of you. I cannot demonstrate this, unfortunately, because I am not an expert. I'm very sorry, but I'm told this is a good technique. I've tried it. I've realized it also is a good technique, even if it's not my favorite. But yes. And again, this information will be available to you all on the forums a little later in the day. Okay, so the most important thing about centering is trying to maintain your center when things are not going well. Some would say when the things hit the fan, right? And so it doesn't matter how much meditation we've done. Well, it does. It actually does matter how much meditation we've done, because we'll be more easily able to find that center. But that never means we won't lose our center from time to time. The important thing is to find it, to find that center. Okay, so we're gonna get to the fun part now, which is about Aiki, from which the title of the book, Aikido in Everyday Life, is taken. Okay, Aikido is one of the 6th conflict resolution idea. So we talked about fighting back, withdrawing, parlay, doing nothing, and deception. Now we're going to talk about Aiki. And Aiki comes in 4 parts: accept, harmonize, redirect, and lead. Okay, so there's a couple of different examples I want to give, right? So there was once a gentleman who was very strong, who, for his own reasons, decided to engage in a conflict with a revolving door. Okay? No matter how hard he pushed. He could not win. So he pushed with half his strength, and the door did 2 revolutions. He pushed with more of his strength, and the door did 4 revolutions. Pretty soon, he was running at the door, and the centrifugal force of the door knocked him out onto the street. Right? That's one type of Aiki. Another, imagine there's a river, and in the river drops this huge boulder. Okay? Now, for a while there, the boulder is going to disrupt the water. But give it a few years and we'll find that the water disrupts the boulder. So if you imagine in 1,000 years, or maybe not even that much time, the boulder, the big boulder, becomes like sand, right? This can sometimes feel like rock, like life, right? So the goal with Aiki is to imagine that instead of becoming sand, the rock could turn. If the rock could turn with the water and roll with resistance, then the rock might still maintain its integrity. This is what's meant by accept. Okay? We know that water kind of adapts to its surroundings. As Bruce Lee says, if you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put water in a bowl, it becomes the bowl. If you put water in a pot, it becomes the pot. Be water, my friends. Right? This is what it means to accept. Okay, so we're talking about in the middle of conflict. So in the same way that the revolving door was able to win out against a strong man, if you have an opponent or you have a person you are speaking with, and they are very committed to attacking you, they are actually counterintuitively more easily handled if you yourself are balanced. Right? So if I'm balanced, I'm more able to understand where a person's coming from, anticipate their attacks, and meet them where they are. Practicing conversational Aiki means that at some point, you and your attacker are going to be occupying the same space and direction. And in layman's terms, we call that empathizing. To empathize with someone doesn't necessarily mean that the person with whom you are conversing is correct. Like Narkis was saying, it means that you understand their right to feel what they are feeling in regards to the situation. In another sense, it's like you're recognizing the thou-ness or humanness in a person. And I understand this can be really confusing, the way that I've explained it. And that's why I have an example. We have Patricia and her parents. They don't get along very well. Her parents are trying to protect her, and Patricia would like to be treated as an adult. Patty is planning on visiting her parents, and here is where we enter the story. Mother, Patty, you can't afford to come all the way down here. Do you have any idea what it costs? Good God, honey. It's about time you grew up and faced the fact that there isn't anybody who's going to take care of you but you. When are you going to develop some little sense of reality? Consider the attacks. Some of the attacks are: Patty doesn't have knowledge or care about money. Patty is naive. And Patty doesn't have a sense of reality. How might you respond? And you're free to tell us in the chat. How might you respond to this? Okay. All right. I just lost the page here. All right, so we have Patty responding. You are really worried about me, aren't you, Mother? I guess having a child must really make a parent worry, especially when they live so far away. The mother responds, your father and I lose sleep sometimes worrying about how you're making out, whether you'll find yourself a husband. Patricia responds, I do too, Ma. It's hard for both of us. And the mother responds, we never said life would be a cinch. Patty then responds, no, you never told me life would be a cinch. And you gave me a lot of really good advice along the way. Some I've been able to use and it's helped me. Some I've been too thick-headed to use and it's hurt. You've been good parents to me. And when I wanted to say thank you, I miss you. Mom responds, we miss you too. I'm sorry we ended up this far away. Patricia responds, are you enjoying yourself? And Mother responds, it's up and down. Your father troubles me a lot. He hasn't been feeling too well lately. Patricia, I'm sorry, that must be a big strain on you. Mother responds, yes, sometimes. Patricia responds, I guess daughters worry about their parents as much as parents worry about their daughters. I guess. Pause. Look, honey, I'm sorry about flying off the handle a few minutes ago. I guess I've got a lot on my mind. We'd like to see you, but the money problems scare me so much these days. I love you both, Patricia says. I love you both. How about I don't buy that fur coat I wanted so I can afford to come down? I checked into the night coach fares so I can cut out the expense down to the bone. And the mother responds, if you really think it's okay. To which Patricia responds, thanks, Ma. So the next question, did you notice the pause? In a physical realm of martial arts, there is always a brief moment where the defender's response. Because of the defender's response, the attacker loses his balance. At this precise moment, the defender is in charge and must take care of the attacker, helping him to a new, firmer, less aggressive balance. This is leading. There are a couple of places where things are unexpected, and the unexpectedness of it all takes Mother off balance. That is where the pauses come in. Let's look at the attacks again. Patty doesn't know or care about money. Patty is naive. Patty doesn't have a sense of reality. How does she respond to the attacks? She doesn't. Instead, she acknowledges that her parents are worried about her, which indicates the thou-ness of humanity and parenthood. She reminds her mother that both her and her father have given good advice over the years. Some she has used, and some she has been too thick-headed to use. The inference being that she can handle her finances because she has either taken advice or learned from not taking it. But do you see that there's another way in which Mother was put off balance? If Mother was expecting a full frontal attack, she didn't get it. She also redirects the energy by asking about them, and in the course of time gets to Mother's real fear, that her own fears about money are causing a projection. But this also buys her time for the final thing she does. She comes back with an amicable solution. Compared to your typical response, how do you consider the idea of Aiki? That's the last question. Compared to your typical response, how do you consider the idea of Aiki? Any comments there? For me, I don't think it's too different from what we learned from Nakis, right? About de-escalation. We learn that we have to balance with our opponent. If they go high, we're not allowed to go high. We have to bring them down. And that's kind of what Aiki is. Aiki is about using a person's momentum against them. We see that in the example. In that case, are there any questions before I end this presentation?
No. No.
Okay. In that case, we come down to the wire. Thank you all for staying with me. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Then may the force be with you.
All right.
Bye-bye.